Hello, my name is Sophia Brueckner, and I'm a software engineer at Google. I've been working at Google for about a year and a half now. I work on the iGoogle team. Don't worry if you don't know what iGoogle is. I will explain it shortly. In my time working for iGoogle, I have often worked with Google Gadgets. Today I'm talking about the Google Gadgets API. At any time, if you feel something is unclear, please feel free to ask me a question. I don't mind stopping. So first, a brief outline of what I'm going to talk about today. First, I'm going to talk about what iGoogle is, in case you don't know. Then I'm going to explain what Google Gadgets are and where they're used. And then, because I think it really shows how easy it is to write gadgets, I will start talking about how I got started writing Google Gadgets. After this, I'll give you an introduction to the Google Gadgets API, where we'll get into code samples, and you'll see exactly what it takes to write your first Google Gadget. I'll also talk about many of the important features in our API. At the end, I'll talk about how you can actually use Google Gadgets on web pages other than iGoogle. And at the end, I'll leave plenty of time for more questions. So raise your hand if you've heard of iGoogle before. OK, so many of you. Raise your hand if you've heard of the Google personalized homepage before. So you probably know that a few weeks ago, we renamed our product from Google personalized homepage to iGoogle. So I'm going to give you a brief demonstration of what iGoogle is and any new features in case you haven't seen them before. So this is the Google homepage for Japan. As you can see, it's very simple. There's the Google logo, and then there's a search box. And then the rest of the page is white. You'll notice this link in the upper right, which says iGoogle. So I'm going to click on it, and it takes me to a page that looks like this. I'd like you to notice that it looks exactly the same as the Google homepage at the top. Well, except the logo is a little bit different now. But it has the same functionality. It's the Google homepage, just with more things on it. It has the same search box. But instead of having a white background, I'm able to customize this page to suit my tastes and needs. So you'll notice here that I have all these different boxes of content. Each one of these boxes is a Google gadget. So what I do is I customize the Google homepage with different Google gadgets. I pick the Google gadgets which I find useful and I like to see on my page all the time. I personally keep iGoogle open all day long, so I keep things that are on my page that are very, very useful. So in addition to customizing my page with content, I also can customize the look and feel of the page. This is also a new feature. So I can choose a skin for my homepage. So for example, this is a beach skin. And something you may not know is that these skins actually change with the time of day. So that means if there's a sun in the skin, it moves across the sky as time goes by. And in your skin, it looks like nighttime when it's at night. So here's a cityscape. Here's a very simple skin, which just shows the sky. This is one of my favorites. There's a little fox, and he's always doing fun things all day. I think my computer's on California time because he's sleeping. And this one's my absolute favorite. There's a little frog and a little ladybug, and they're always playing games all day and roasting marshmallows and having picnics, and it makes me very jealous of them. So I'll save that one as my default skin. We also have skins that change with the weather. So depending on the weather outside, you actually see if it's raining outside, you actually see raining in your skin. So I can drag and drop these Google gadgets on the page. I can customize them. So here I'm changing the color. And the very useful thing about this page is that wherever I'm signed into Google, I see the same contents. So my page can be viewed from any computer anywhere. So we also have tabs on iGoogle. So you might not have seen this feature before. So these are very smart tabs. So I have I'm feeling lucky checked. And I'm going to name my tab tools. So I click OK. And it actually creates a tab for me filled with tools. So it uses algorithms to populate my tab with things that it thinks I will like. So you can see that it's given me Wikipedia, a calendar, and a calculator, and various useful tools. So now you might wonder where you can find more gadgets. Well, I'll click on this link that says Add Stuff. And this is our directory of gadgets. So here you can browse thousands of gadgets and find things that you like and add them to your page. So I'll just add a few things. You can see there's all these different categories of different types of gadgets people have written. So there's games and tools and news. So I can click on one of these and find out more about it. We actually have ratings and reviews for all these gadgets as well. And now I will go back to my home page and see what it looks like. So here you can see the gadgets that I have chosen for my page. So here are a few more examples of Google gadgets. So you can see on here in the upper left, there's a very useful, this is a very useful gadget for me in Tokyo. It shows all the subways, and actually let me see if I can show it to you on my page. I can search the directory. So I've added that to my page. So this is a very nice example of using the Google Maps API with a Google gadget. So you can drag and drop the map. You can click on a stop and find out more information. You can step through it. You can change the train line. It's very useful. You can see we have weather here. There's stocks. There's a calendar. There's, at the bottom, there's a countdown to a wedding. There's also lots and lots of games people have written. I can read my Gmail on my iGoogle page. The sky's the limit when you're writing gadgets. You can write a gadget that does anything. So now I really want to explain to you how easy it is to get started writing a gadget. So I always like to tell my story because it just shows how little you have to know before you can write your first gadget. So I joined the iGoogle team when the Google Gadgets API was just released. At that time, there were very few gadgets. So I wanted to customize my page, but I didn't find the gadgets I was looking for. I especially wanted to be able to store my own personal information in iGoogle. So I like to be very organized and have all of my information in one place. So what I ended up doing is I wrote a to-do list gadget. As you can see here in my to-do list, buying ice cream is very important, much more important than paying rent. So here's my to-do list. and I'll show you how it works. So I just put in to-dos. So first I'll put in pay bills and buy coffee. Coffee is also very important to me. And buy ice cream, of course. And so now I can reprioritize my list. And I'm going to say this is very high priority. And there it goes to the top, and this is low priority. It's going to go to the bottom. And you can see that it resorts on my page automatically. And I can also customize this list by changing the color, and I'll change the title to Sophia's Things to Do. And I'll change the color again. OK. So the thing that's very useful about that is that I can see it from any computer anywhere. So I don't have to carry around an agenda. I can just check my to-do list on any computer if I'm signed into Google. And at this time, I didn't know JavaScript. I didn't know HTML. I was very inexperienced with web programming. But in a very short amount of time, I was able to write this gadget, and I released it to the world, and it became one of the most popular gadgets in every country. So that just shows you how easy it is to get started. Here's another example. So I live in Santa Cruz, which is one of the biggest surf cities in the world. And with surfing, you can only go surfing when the waves are really good. And the waves change all the time. They're very fickle. And so what I ended up doing is I would go to this other website multiple times a day, and I would keep checking the wave report. And this got very annoying to me to have to keep going to this website all the time. So I found an RSS feed on their website, and I took it, and I put it inside my gadget. So what it does is it takes that RSS feed, and then it displays it in a useful way on my homepage. So now it's very convenient because since I have my iGoogle page open all day, I can see the way the waves are at any time. And so you can see that if the waves are good, I highlight it in green and put it in bold, and then I know I have to leave work early and go surfing immediately. And here's a few other examples of gadgets I've written. The one in the upper right is a sticky note. It's very simple, but very useful. It just lets you type in arbitrary text, and it saves it. In the lower right, you see, I want to talk about this example because I think it really shows you what's possible with our API. This is probably, I think, the most complicated gadget I've ever written. Some of you might have seen it when the World Cup happened a year ago. So we wrote this gadget for the World Cup. Sports Illustrated provided us with RSS feeds to give us data. And so what we actually did is you were able to see World Cup matches live, up to the minute, right on your iGoogle homepage. So every single minute, we were fetching this data and displaying it in the gadget. So you could see who got the goals. You could see who got red cards, yellow cards, and you could see all the players that were currently on the field live up to the minute. And you can see there's actually 3 tabs in this gadget. So the second tab told you the outcome of all the matches. And the third tab would show you the standings of all the teams in the World Cup and let you know who was doing really well and who wasn't. So you can see how much information we were able to put in a small space on the personalized homepage. And with this gadget, we actually translated it into all of our languages, and it turned out to be extremely popular, not only in the US, but it was very popular in other countries. And so there are a few other examples here. For example, there's movie reviews, and there's a gadget that lets you know what TV shows are on tonight and current entertainment news. So now you might ask, why would you want to write a Google gadget? For me, I write them because I think they're really fun. It's not actually part of my job. I just really like doing it. I like making users happy and giving them something useful for their homepage. But iGoogle actually has tens of millions of users. And there are just so many users, and they all have such varied interests that there's not enough gadgets for them to customize their pages. So there's a great demand for gadgets. And so not only are there tens of millions of users, but these users exist in 40 different countries and 26 languages. So iGoogle is all over the world, and we're adding new languages and new countries all the time. So if you write a gadget, you can reach many people in many countries. So who writes all the gadgets that you saw in our directory? So you remember that there were thousands of gadgets in that directory. So there are a few people at Google like me who write gadgets. Most of us actually write them for fun, not for our jobs. But only a tiny part of those thousands of gadgets are actually written by Google. Almost all of those are written by independent developers outside of Google. And among these developers, it really varies greatly. There are people who have quit their jobs just to write gadgets, and they make a living this way. And then on the other side of the spectrum, there are teenagers who just decided to learn our API, and they wrote a few gadgets for fun, and now they are incredibly successful. I always like to tell this story when I talk about our developers. So I actually met the author of this gadget. He's 14 years old from the Netherlands, and he just decided to learn the gadget API just for fun. So what he did is he wrote the Wikipedia gadget, and it was very easy for him. All it does is you type in a query, and it takes you to the Wikipedia page in the language you've selected for that query. And he did this just for fun, and it was very easy, but now it's actually one of the most popular gadgets in the entire world. In every single country, this is one of the most popular gadgets. And so I think this story really shows you how easy our API is and how many people you can reach by writing a gadget. And another type of developer is businesses who are looking for more traffic to their page. So what they do is they create a useful gadget that users want to put on their page. So this gadget is useful, but when the user wants to find out more information, they link to their main page. So they're constantly getting new users and more traffic by these links to their main page. And there are many examples of gadgets like this. Often they are newspapers, they're sports news providers, and entertainment news providers are some examples. There are many more examples. So now that you know why you'd want to write a gadget, let's write our first one together. So it's very, very simple. You can write your first gadget in 5 minutes. If you already know how to write a web program, you already can write a gadget. It's essentially just HTML. And if you want to make it more complicated, it's just JavaScript and CSS. So here you can see it's just a little bit of HTML in an XML wrapper. The XML just provides a little extra data with your gadget. So let's look at this code example together. So in the first line, I'm just indicating that this file contains XML, and it's encoded in UTF-8. Next, you're going to see the word module, and this is confusing. This is a historical word. We used to call Google Gadgets modules a long time ago. And unfortunately, this is still all over our API. So anytime you see the word module, just think gadget in your head. So on the third line, there's just a little bit of data that goes with the gadget. In this case, all we're doing is specifying a title for the gadget. In this case, the title is just title. And then in the middle of the gadget is the contents. So we're indicating that we're putting HTML inside. And then we use CData tags. What the CData does is that it tells the parser that what's in between the C data tags is HTML. So it's telling it to not escape it, or else it would escape out all of your brackets, quotes, and your HTML would be broken. So inside the C data tags, it just says hello world. And that's it. That's the whole gadget. All you have to do is host it somewhere. And while you're experimenting, you can use Google Code or Google Page Creator to host something for free. Then you add the gadget to your iGoogle page, and it will look just like that at the bottom. So in all of 5 minutes, you would have created your first gadget. So I'd like to show you another very simple way to write a gadget. So suppose you've already written a great website. This lets you reuse the code you already have. So this simply just takes your website and loads it in an iframe on the iGoogle page. So in my example here, I'm taking the IMDb website and I'm putting it inside a gadget. So at the bottom, you can see it's even less code than what you saw before. Again, at the top, I just say it's XML. And in my gadget preferences, I have a title IMDb. And because it's an iframe, I specify a height. So in this case, I'm saying, please make my iframe 250 pixels tall. And here in the contents, instead of HTML, I have content type equals URL. And then I specify the URL of the website I'd like it to load. So this is what the gadget would look like. And one of the useful things about this is it avoids complicated authentication problems if you have your gadget hosted somewhere else. So do I have any questions so far? Okay. Oh. I need an earpiece.
A question in English.
Okay.
Do you actually lose the sidebar when you host the page in your iframe then?
So I tried to make this example as memorable as possible. So I sort of tweaked it a little bit. What you would actually do is design your original website to fit in the gadget nicely.
Thank you.
Other questions? OK. So another way to reuse existing code. Suppose you already have a great Flash program. And also, Flash is very powerful, so this is a very useful way to write a gadget as well. So in our gadget API, we've already built in support for Flash. So you can see that this, here's the code for this gadget. And it's very similar to what we had before, again. Except in the content section, I use this function called IG embed Flash. And to this, I pass the location of my Flash file. I give it a name. And then I give it some extra data. In this case, it's just the width and the height. So I'll show you this gadget. OK. OK, so this is a little bit slow, so I'm going to skip it. So what this gadget actually does, it's extremely useful. In the gadget, there's little fish that swim around. And then you click on the gadget, and it puts food for them, and then they go eat it. And people love this sort of stuff for iGoogle. And so the very useful thing about this function is usually, if you're familiar with embedding Flash, it's many lines, and it's difficult to work across browsers. So we take care of all of this for you. So if you use our function, it will integrate perfectly into iGoogle, and it will work across all our supported browsers. So earlier you saw me configure a gadget. This is a very important part of our API, probably the most useful. So users can customize their gadgets using our user preferences in our API. So here I have a Japanese weather gadget. I click on this link that says Edit, and it pops down this edit window. And right now the gadget is showing 2 days of weather, and I'd like it to show 4. So I select 4, I click Save, and then you see 4 days of weather. So built into our API is the ability to do this. You can have user preferences that are in the form of text, checkboxes, and drop-downs of items. And there are some others. And then anytime the user comes back to the iGoogle page, they'll see their configuration. So here's a more complicated code example that will show you all the things that you can do with user preferences. Well, maybe not everything, but the most important things. So on the right here, I have a note gadget. It's similar to the sticky note that I wrote previously. So you can see it's just a text box with some text in it. And when I want to save what I wrote, I just click Save Note. And then it saves my data. Then whenever I come back to iGoogle, I'll see that same text displayed there. In addition, I can change the background color for my gadget in the edit window. So there's a user preference called color, and I can choose from some different colors. So on the left here, I have the code for this gadget. So you can see here that in the content tags, I actually don't just have HTML. I have JavaScript, I have CSS, and I have HTML. So it's just like a web page, except there's no body tags and no head tags. So in order to set user preferences from within my gadget, I have to put this one line in that says, require feature set prefs. You can find out about this in our API documentation. So the first thing I'll talk about is how to create a user preference for the color of the gadget. So that's the second one. So you can see here, I added another XML tag called userpref. And I gave it a name, and so I named my preference color. And then I also have a display name, which is color capitalized, and that's what gets displayed here in the gadget. And within this tag, I have all the values I want in my dropdown. I should also mention this data type here. In this case, my data type is enum, which is what makes it a dropdown or an HTML select box. And I give it a default value, which is yellow. So here in all my items in the dropdown, I have display names, which are the names of the colors, and then I have values, which are all the HTML color codes. And so the way I use this user preference, you can see right here I have this block of CSS. So my container element has a background color. And in that, instead of putting in like white or a hex color code, I put in a placeholder, which is up_color. And as you can see, color corresponds to the name of my user preference here. So when the gadget loads on the iGoogle page, this placeholder, up_color, will be replaced with the value of the user preference. So in this case, when the gadget loads, up_color will be replaced with the color yellow FFFCC. So now we'll talk about this more complicated way of using user preferences. So now suppose you wanted to save something, but you didn't want it to actually be displayed in this edit window. So what I do is I create a user preference with a data type of hidden. So hidden just means I want to have this user preference, but I don't want it to show up in that edit window. So here I've created a user preference with the name of text. And I've given it a default value. It says, this is my note. And you can see that the default value shows up here in the text box. Just like before, I have a placeholder in my code. So at the bottom, you see my HTML. So you see I have a text area here, which corresponds to this text area here. And inside, I have up_text. So when the gadget renders on the page, up_text gets replaced with the value of the user preference with the name of text. So now you'd like to know how I actually save that preference. So I have my button, which says Save Note here. The HTML for it is right here. Input type equals button. And so when you click on the button, I have it call a function called save. So I've defined my function save right here in the script tags. And inside that function, I instantiate a new prefs object. And I set the preference with the name of text to the value of the text area. So this function here, _GEL, is just an abbreviation. It does the same thing as document.getElementById. So I'm getting the element with the ID of note, which is the text area here. And I'm taking its value, and I'm setting it to be the preference of text. So this is a very useful way to save the state of your gadget using our user preferences API. So this is a very simple example. Like you saw my to-do list before. That's more complicated. What I actually did in the to-do list is I created a JSON object of to-do items. I converted it into a string, and then I saved it just like this. So this is a very simple idea, but it's very powerful. So now when anybody comes to the iGoogle page, they'll see a yellow note that says, this is my note. So the other very powerful feature in our API is the ability to fetch content from other web pages and use it inside your gadget. So here I am showing this TV gadget as an example. You can see there's 3 tabs in the gadget. And in each one of those 3 tabs, I'm fetching a different XML feed from another website. And then using that XML feed, I display data in different ways. So in the first tab, I'm showing all the different TV shows that are going on tonight and for different days of the week. The second tab has recaps of TV shows that happened last night. And the third tab has recent TV news. So this is all built into our API, and it's very easy to use as well. You can fetch text in HTML. You can fetch XML files. And you can fetch RSS and Atom feeds. And so we don't overload other people's web pages by fetching from them all the time. We cache everything automatically for you. So here are our 3 methods. So the first one is IG fetch content. It takes a URL where you want to fetch from, and then it takes a callback function. The callback function is called when the content is fetched and it gets passed to the callback. So this one is particularly useful if you want to fetch HTML and then scrape from it. The one I use most of all is IG fetch XML content. Again, it takes a URL and a callback. So it will fetch XML files, and it will return XML objects. And if you've worked with XML, you know it's very easy to parse and easy to use. And if you know that you're going to be fetching things that are in the form of an RSS feed or an Atom feed, you can use this last function, IG fetch feed as JSON. So this is very useful because it will return a JSON object of all the feed contents. And if you've used JSON, you know it's very easy to work with. It has two extra parameters. There's the entries parameter. The entries parameter just indicates how many entries in the feed you want. And then the summaries parameter indicates if you want to get the full articles with the feed as well. Because if you don't need them, you shouldn't fetch them because it's a lot of content to fetch. So here's an example. In this example, I'm just going to fetch an XML list, and I'm going to display it in my gadget. So you can see on the left, I just have an XML file that specifies a list. Again, it just says I have XML at the top. Then I have a tag which says I have a list here. And in this list, I have 4 items. And the values of these items are list item 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so on the right here, you see my code for this gadget. Most of it is the same as what you saw before. Here we have a title. It's XML list this time. And now in the contents, you'll see some slightly different code. So the first thing you'll see is this IG register onload handler. So, and then I'm passing it this function called load list. So what this does is it says, when the gadget is loaded on the page, please call the function load list. So when this gadget is rendered, load list, which is a function I've defined right here, will be called. Actually, it's right here. So the load list function simply just fetches an XML file. Here I've given it the XML file for this. And when it gets that XML file, it's going to call the function render list. So beneath here, I've written my function render list, and it takes an XML object. So the first part of this function just checks to see if the XML is null. If it's null, then the gadget just does nothing, and it displays blank. You could have it display an error here if you wanted. If it is a valid XML object, then I want to take my XML object and get all of the items out of it. So what I do is I get elements by tag name, and the name I want is item. So what this does is it's going to take this XML file, and it's going to get me these 4 items out of it. Then I just loop through those 4 items, and I just call it document.write, which just prints out whatever it takes. And I print out the contents of that XML item. So in this case, it's going to loop through these 4 items in the list, and it's going to print out list item 1, 2, 3, and 4. So in all the more complicated gadgets you saw, it's pretty much doing the same thing. There's just more things I'm getting out of the XML file, and there's more complicated formatting. The next thing I'd like to talk about is how to translate your gadget into other languages. It is also very simple to do this in our API. Now, why would you want to translate your gadget? Well, maybe you don't want to just reach Japanese users, but you'd like to reach users all over the world. Remember that we're in 40 countries and 26 languages, and more all the time. So it really makes sense to translate your gadget because you'll get many, many more users. So on this slide, I have my to-do list, and it's in Japanese, and it's also in Russian. So all you need to do to translate a gadget is just add a few more XML files. Basically, all you need to do is add an XML file for each language you want to support. The XML file just contains the messages for that language. So here I have a simple example. It just translates hello world from English to Japanese. So on the right here, you see my XML files for the two languages. So there's one XML tag called message for each string. So this gadget is very simple. It just has a title, and then it says hello world. So I just have two messages in my XML file. I have a message for title, and then beneath that is hello world. And each one of these messages has a name. So this one is named title, and below I've named the second message hello. So now you can see the XML for Japan underneath. I still have the same message names, so I have the name is title and hello, but inside I have the Japanese strings for title and hello world. So iGoogle will automatically load the right messages for the user's language. If the user is a Japanese user, it will automatically load the Japanese file if you define these tags here in your original gadget. So for every locale you want to support, and by locale I mean a language and country pairing. So you can have a file for English. You can also have a file for Canadian English. So in this case, I've added two locales, one for English and one for Japanese. So these are the language codes. And then messages equal tells it where to find the XML file with the translations. And now to actually use the strings in your gadget, you just use more placeholders, very similar to user preferences. So here the title is equal to message underscore title. So message just indicates as a placeholder. And title corresponds to the name title in the message file. And the same with hello. So now when this gadget loads on iGoogle, if the user has Japanese selected as their language, it's going to show up like this. And if they have English, then it will show up as English. So you can see that's very easy. And in gadgets that have only little bits of text, you can often use machine translation to translate it to many languages. And if you make mistakes, users will email you and complain. So now that you've written this wonderful gadget, you want to know how to get it into that directory and introduce it to the world. So you remember that the directory looks like this. There's all these gadgets displayed in a grid. So all you need to do is add a little bit more information to your gadget XML file. So I'm going to want to add a thumbnail image. So there's a nice, catchy thumbnail that shows in the directory. And actually, gadgets that have nice thumbnails tend to be more popular because it really catches the user's eye. So that's very important. And then you also need to have a screenshot image for your gadget, which shows up on this page here. If you remember, when I click on any one of these thumbnails, it'll take me to a page that has more information. And on this page, there's the screenshot. I also want to provide a description for my gadget so people know what they're getting. And then I want to add some author information that gets displayed right here. So you get credit. So you just add your name, affiliation, and location. So for me, it would be Sophia Brueckner, Google Inc., and I would say Santa Cruz, California. So that's actually all you have to do. You go to this page. I put the URL at the bottom, but you can also find it in our API docs. You just put your URL of your gadget on this page, submit it into this page. And this page will actually parse the gadget and report to you any errors if they exist. And if there are no errors, you'll see your gadget in the directory a few days later. And that's it. So now I'm going to talk about something a little bit different. I have no idea why it's doing this. OK, it stopped. So Google gadgets don't just work on iGoogle. They work in other Google properties. They work on Google Desktop, which there's talk about after this. I think they also work in the Mac OS X dashboard. And they work in a few other places. In addition to that, you can also put Google gadgets on any website, anywhere. Any page, any blog, anything. And most gadgets will work this way. So on this page, I have two examples. On the left, there's a page that's for traveling to Hawaii. And you can see that they've put a gadget on their page. It's a tropical storms gadget, so it lets you know if there are any tropical storms that are going to spoil your vacation. Very useful. And on the right here, we have another one where someone embedded a webcam that's from a gadget on their website. So there are many applications to this. One example that I often use is that I have a gadget with my photos in it, and I can just embed it on my blog. So this is very easy to do. So you go to a page like this, and this is also linked to from our API docs, so you don't have to worry about remembering. So this feature is called Google Gadgets for your web page. You come to a page like this. You see the gadget that you want to add to your page. There's a live preview of it. You input all the data you want inside your gadget. So for example, this gadget takes my Picasa RSS feed and makes a slideshow inside a gadget. So on this page, I specify the location of my RSS feed, a title for my gadget, and I also can pick a colorful frame if I want. And once I'm happy with it, I click this button that says Get the Code, and it will spit out a bunch of HTML. And all I have to do is take the HTML and cut and paste it to my website. And that's all you have to do to embed a gadget on your page. So you can see that if you write a Google gadget, not only will you reach tens of millions of iGoogle users all over the world, you could also potentially reach many, many, many more users by being embedded on other people's websites. If you write something useful, people will put it on their pages. So on this last page, I have some useful links. Okay, I'm going to go back to this. So here are the links. So the most important one is the link to our API documentation. You can easily find it under Google documentation for any APIs. Then I have the link for iGoogle in Japan. And there's the link for Google Gadgets for your web page. The fourth link is interesting. It's a link to our top authors page. So the 20 most popular, most successful gadget authors, we put their profile on our page. So we'll put their picture and all their information. So you get to be famous too. And then the last link is a discussion group where you can talk about our API. And now I would be happy to answer any questions. Okay. Which one's this way? Oh. Okay.
Oh.
Okay, thank you. All right. Technical difficulties. Okay, now I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes, in the front.
読み込ん
The flash that you read in, and can you communicate that to the server?
Add more to your question?
So for example, on iGoogle, you have your flash, and then from flash, can you access to the server and then extract data from the server? Is that possible? In other words, are there any cross-domain restrictions with what you've just explained to us?
いや、違います。例えば
No, no, no. The fish that you showed us, sorry. Let's say the server possesses data like one goldfish died, and so you can actually go to the server and extract that information and show that in some way. In other words, only the user preferences can save the state. Is that the way this works?
I know that you can use user preferences inside your Flash. I've seen that done. I personally haven't done much with Flash, so I'm not sure what the extent of our API is. I know that we're currently developing more functionality to Flash all the time, so I would double check our API documentation to see exactly what is possible. We're currently working on this.
Thank you.
Other questions? In the back?
Google の
So on Google, within Google, what kind of gadgets are popular in the Google? What kind of application, what kind of gadgets are popular within Google Inc.?
Google employees?
Yes. Yes. In Google Inc. in the US, maybe amongst the Google engineers or marketing people, what kind of gadgets are most popular? If you have any which are quite used by most employees in the US.
Lots of people use Gmail. They use the Google Calendar gadget. They like the to-do list. There's another one we really like. Let me show it to you. We love this one. It reminds us of Linux. It looks like it's a little bit slow right now, but usually it's more alert. What else do we really like? Those are the ones I can think of right now. We always like the silly ones. When we see really silly ones in the directory, really like those. Oh, there's one gadget I really like. I'll show it to you. Oops. This is probably my favorite gadget. Sorry, this internet connection's a bit slow. So basically you have this pony, and you can change his colors. And his hair gets messy, so you can specify how often his hair gets messy. And then you have to brush his hair and keep it neat. I like it. I don't know if that really answers your question. So it looks like I'm out of time. So I hope you see how easy it is to write gadgets. And I hope you remember that when you write a gadget, you can reach tens of millions of people all over the world. And I hope that I see your gadgets in the directory very soon. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to speak to you today.